Recorded. I'm going to be talking about TypeScript. Show of hands, who's heard of TypeScript before this? Kramer has. Okay, great. Has anyone used it before? Anyone? Jason, James? Okay, no surprises. All right, so what is TypeScript? Let's go next slide. TypeScript is. Blow it up. Uh, Okay, so TypeScript, they like to call it JavaScript that scales. It's developed by Microsoft and it's a superset of JavaScript. So it can do everything that normal JavaScript does, but more. Um, and then, yeah, so it's open source. They're developing it. It's kind of like CoffeeScript in that it gets compiled down to base JavaScript when you deploy it in production. Um, but it lets you do a few cool things. Oh yeah, they also developed VS Code, which is a special editor that they wrote in TypeScript for JavaScript and TypeScript. I've started using it. You guys should check it out. It's really quick and great. All right. So I included a couple links here in the presentation that you guys should all check out. TypeScript Lang goes over all of TypeScript. Then the GitHub, if you want to look at the internals, if you're crazy or you like doing that, then yeah, link to the editor. Cool. So TypeScript basically allows for two nice things. Some additional tooling that base JavaScript doesn't allow, like, well, since it's, sorry, I don't remember if I mentioned this, but it's statically typed. It allows you to define the types of your variables, and that allows statement completion, type checking, auto completing, all these super nice features that we get like in PHP Storm with PHP, but normally JavaScript doesn't let you do that. And then the other half of TypeScript is implementing future JavaScript language features. Because currently the next spec is called ES6 or ES 2015. It adds a lot of really great things to the language like classes and Lambda functions, all sorts of useful tools. But the current web browsers do not support 100% of that spec. But we can use TypeScript and then transpile it back down to the current spec, and we can use all these nice features. Um, and eventually, when the browsers catch up, we can just switch the compile uh, target to the next spec and it'll work perfectly fine. And we can keep using like even further ahead things from ES 2016 and 17 as soon as they get implemented in TypeScript, which is super useful. I added a link here to the es6features.org. Most of these are implemented in TypeScript, and they're not slated to be, I guess, in most browsers until at least the end of this year or next year. So we can start using these cool features today. So one of the biggest things is classes and inheritance. Right now, JavaScript does not allow for classes. It allows for kind of pseudo classes using the prototype, if you're familiar with that in JavaScript, but it's not very easy to use. This just makes it a lot easier, adds a bunch of syntax sugar. And another thing, Lambda function. So the top line there, right here, this is how you normally define a function in JavaScript today. Lambda functions or arrow functions, you can define them like this. And this is just pretty much sugar. It also has one side effect that it'll do a this binding at the end. If you're familiar with JavaScript scoping, it can get a bit confusing sometimes. And when you refer to this inside functions, it's not always what you're expecting it to. This tends to help. Then another thing is modules. So JavaScript right now, we tend to just include a bunch of different JavaScript files and everything is globally scoped on a page, which is fine, I guess. It's kind of scary at times, but modules let you define imports and exports to files, so you can do things like here, so you can import jQuery as $sign from the actual module itself, and this helps making it a bit more obvious where things are coming from. Another thing is block scoping is implemented, so when you refer to this, it should refer to the block that the code is in as opposed to the global scope, or however it's set up. And then a few other cool things like default parameters, super useful, and the rest operator here. So you could potentially have however many more inputs here, and then it allows you to do code kind of like this. You can reference this as like an array. Yeah. I'd have to get back to you on that. I don't know off the top of my head. Yeah, but they're just easier to use and syntax is shorter. And you don't have to keep typing out function everywhere. So I've just switched to start using them as often as I can. So the setup's really easy. It's all on npm if you're familiar. If you're not, npm is the JavaScript package manager or node package manager. It's pretty much the de facto package manager for JavaScript. You can download that from Node's website, I believe. Most of you should have it on your computers already, but this is all you need to do is do an npm install global TypeScript. We'll install the language, and then you should also install TSD, which is for the type definitions. I'll go over later, but basically they allow you to map other node modules to TypeScript, so you can use practically any other code that's on npm with your TypeScript. Alright, so I'm going to have a quick demo to go over TypeScript files, transpiling, that's the compiling back down to normal JavaScript, and a few ES6 features, or ES 2015, however you prefer to call it. Alright, so this is a plain JavaScript file. Nothing too crazy going on here. I don't know if anyone can tell, but there are a few bugs in this code that JavaScript innately won't tell you about, just because it doesn't do any sort of type checking. But if you do, you can rename this JavaScript file to a TypeScript file, and now this is functioning TypeScript. Is that better? Is that better? All right. Yeah, it's easy for me here. Guess not up there. All right, so yeah, this function has a few bugs in it, but now that we renamed it to TypeScript, like .ts, which is the TypeScript extension, we can start using some of the TypeScript features. So here we're trying to sort an array. The idea is to sort an array of objects that have an age and a name defined based on the name. And TypeScript allows you to define interfaces, which you can think of as kind of just schema for objects. JavaScript objects are used everywhere. So you can do things like age, define it as a number, and then name, string. There are a few other different types. There are function types, objects, some other ones that I don't recall off the top of my head. And then in here, you can define what we're expecting here. So we're expecting an array of persons, which I guess would be people, but anyways. So yeah, so now we start seeing some squigglies are appearing, and then, yeah, here and here. So if you mouse over here, it starts doing some type checking. And so it knows x.name is a string because we typecast it here and to an array of persons, people, and then we're doing a sort, which is an array function in JavaScript. So we mouse over here and we see, oh, this is a bug. Local compare does not exist on type string. It's actually locale compare. Yeah, sneaky. All right. And then another issue is if we mouse over here, it's giving the type definition for the sort function. It's saying that returning void is not assignable when it's expecting a number because we're iterating over an array and checking some numbers and comparing them. So we're missing a return statement here, and that should go away. Cool. So now we can come down to our command line and run the TypeScript compiler. When you do that npm install for TypeScript, it installs TSC, which is short for TypeScript compiler. Before you start working on a project, you should also do an init, which will create an init config here with some default values. See the target ES5, that is the current JavaScript spec. You can change that. I'll show you in a little bit what that'll do. Alright, so if we do TSC, it will attempt to compile everything, and it compiled it out to here. Alright, let's have these side by side. Oh, that is the same file twice. Alright, so on the left there's a TypeScript file, and you can notice on the right it strips out all of the additional type hints. So this person right here, that's gone. The interface is gone. All of this, it just strips it out and returns basic JavaScript. So the compiler is doing static type checking when you run it, and it will usually throw errors when it finds things that are wrong. Oh, weird. Anyways, no return? Oh, because I didn't save when I ran it. Ha. You should always save your files, guys. Alright, so yeah. And it's throwing a few issues here. So it's doing that static type checking, blah, blah, blah. Duplicate identifier age. Name. I think I just had it in a different file. Sorry. Okay, yeah. Argument type number is not assignable to parameter type person. So if we scroll down here where we're actually calling the code, we see I'm doing a console log of sort by name, which is this function that we define up here, expecting an array of person. 5 doesn't work, obviously, so that's a bug. So we can go in, change this to an array, and so now it knows that it's supposed to be a person, it's missing age. So we can start doing this, it'll start auto-completing both of the fields that it's expecting. So name, and then age 20. And then that should work. All of the static analysis is done. You can rerun this, and it compiled fine. And over here we can see that it updated in the compiled file. Now if we use node to run it, it should do things. Yep, okay, so down here, a console logged out the sorted arrays. Oh, I dragged it. Okay, cool. Any questions so far? All right, second demo. So I mentioned that in the tsconfig that you can create using the TypeScript compiler -init. So doing this will create a TypeScript config. Switch to demo 2. You can specify the target, and the target is which version of JavaScript you want to compile out to. Currently, they only support compiling to ES5 and before. Actually, TypeScript 1.7 added ES6, which is pretty useful if you want to see how compatible your codebase is in the next version, or if you don't like being compatible for other users and you just want them to use Google Chrome. If you have any predilections. So if you go into the tsconfig, you can change this target. Instead of ES5, you can do ES6. Before I do that, let's look at this demo here. So in this demo, we have an example of some ES6 features of class. So this is very similar to PHP or any other object-oriented language. You can create classes, you can define things on the class, refer to them. There's a constructor. There's also inheritance. You could potentially do something like this, extends book, and then do different things. Very standard. But this is not standard ES6 JavaScript, so this would not run in the wild right now. So we would need to compile this first. Alright, so a new file has appeared. This is the base JavaScript. So this converted the TypeScript into ES5 over here. And some of you might be familiar or have seen some of this code in the wild before. It's basically wrapping book as a function that returns an object and doing things like that. But if we wanted to, we could also change the output from ES5 to ES6, which allows classes. So then we change that in the config. You can recompile it, and it should have the class stuff right here. So this looks practically the same as what we have in TypeScript. So you can do that if you're curious. You can move the slider of where you want to compile to. You can potentially go all the way back as far as it goes. I know it goes back to at least ES3. Some companies need to support browsers that far back. Luckily we don't, so that's not really an issue. But yeah, lets you change your target. Let's go back. What else? Type definitions. So type definitions are how you work with external libraries in TypeScript. Most external libraries are not written in TypeScript, so they need what's called a type definition file or a .d.ts. And this is essentially a mapping over that library to give all of the type hints that you would expect. So there, for example, we recently wrote one of these to map a specific node module for React and Suite Alerts that wasn't mapped, and we just added all of the definitions as if it was written in TypeScript. But for most of the time, you don't need to do this yourself. There is a fantastic GitHub repository with thousands of these already done for you. So pretty much any standard JavaScript library that you want to use, there will be a type definitions for it already. So there's ones for Angular 1, Angular 2, React, Lodash, underscore, basically everything you need. And then to handle your type definition files, there's a helpful tool called TSD or typings. TSD is getting phased out. Typings is a newer version, but for now I'm going to show you TSD. So you can install that with npm, just like any other JavaScript. So, and TSD is its own kind of typings package manager. It will handle installing all of those type definitions files that you need. So for example, you can type TSD install Lodash, and that would install the typings declaration for the Lodash module. Alright, cool. And another thing to mention is you don't need these typings to work with JavaScript modules that don't have them. It just makes it a lot nicer. It enables all of the autocomplete features, all the static typing hints, but it will still work. You just would have to look up all of them when you use it on your own. Usually, I said before, they'll already be done for you. They're not hard to do yourself. It only takes maybe 20-30 minutes, hopefully, if it's not too big. If it's a lot larger, then it might take some time, but alright, cool.
Can you show us what those typings look like?
Yeah. Let me go grab some. Yeah, we'll go over that in a bit. Alright, so what are we doing? I'm going to show you how to install a typings declaration. You just do tsd install, and we're going to work with Lodash right now. Lodash is a node module. I had already installed it in this folder using npm. So all the JavaScript source code is right here. It's a bit hard to see. So this is just the base JavaScript installed with npm. And then by doing that tsd install Lodash, it will create a new typings folder. Then inside, it will look at that definitely typed GitHub repository, and then it will try and find what you were looking for, and it will then download it if it finds it. Instead of using TSD, you could be using typings, which allows you to search for them if you don't remember the exact name. And has some other cool new features. I haven't really looked into it too much, but now we're going to use TSD. So this is a lodash.d.ts file, which is the typing. So there's just a bunch of comments at the top, but if you scroll down, okay, here. So now you start seeing definitions for different parts of Lodash. So Lodash, implicit array wrapper, blah, blah, blah. Interface template settings, it's just like a normal TypeScript interface. You can define different parts. Yeah. So these tend to be very long if the library is long, but they'll just have pretty much every possible implementation of the library's functions just with the mapping to TypeScript. Does that help? Yeah, okay, cool. Alright, so now that we have the node module installed and the typings installed, we can start using it. So, as I mentioned earlier, we can use imports. So imports as underbar from Lodash. So this will load the npm module Lodash as this underscore. And now with that typings, we can start doing things using it. So let's do my list is 1, 2, 3, 4. All right, so we have a list here. Also, if you mouse over different variables, it'll tell you what they are. So it's an array of numbers. Then underscore dot. Oh yeah, Lodash is an array helper library for JavaScript. It speeds up a lot of the built-in functions and gives you a lot of other really cool ones. So it has like filter or map, also reduce, stuff like that. Very basic array functions and a lot more complicated ones. So now we have this autocomplete. So it tells you what it's expecting. If I do this. Yes, okay, cool. It's expecting a collection of a list with any type. So if we just start doing this, we pass in my list, and then we can pass in, oh yeah, it also lets you cycle through all of the different definitions that it can find. So if there are multiple different definitions for a function, you can look for the one that you're looking for, or if you just keep filling in the gaps, it will come up with what you need. So then it's expecting a function. You can just keep doing this. So map returns, let's just say A. So this works. It should work at least. Okay, cool. I have a few more in here. Just a better example. So here we have a list, and then we're filtering over the list to try and pull out the odds and pull out the evens, and then just console logging what we get. And then down here for each odd, is it not big enough? Oh, sorry. Alright, is that better? Okay, cool. So yeah, so we're filtering over this list of numbers and trying to grab out the odds here and the evens, and then just console logging them. So we should just be able to compile this file and then run it with Node. Cool. Then here we have the results. That is hard to see. Alright, so down here we outputted evens, the odds, and each of the odds. And that is basically it for the most part. Cool. So a quick recap. TypeScript is kind of like CoffeeScript or some of those other JavaScript-like languages. Statically typed. It's a superset. You transpile it back down to whatever version of JavaScript you want to use. Usually right now it's ES5. It gives you a bunch of useful tools like type hints, autocomplete, things like that, and implements a lot of new language features. And Then you have the TypeScript definition files to map to work with current modules that are optional. And that's about it. Any questions?
So in our production code base, which files should we check in? Both of them?
What do you mean?
TypeScript, right? TypeScript.
Oh, so which versions do you check in?
Well, we need to write TypeScript first, and then
Right.
compare it to standard JavaScript.
Right.
Use it, right? So
Yeah.
should we check in both of them? Or?
For now, we are checking in both the plain JavaScript compiled files and the source files.
Okay.
But usually we will, for the few projects that are using it right now, we have like a build script set up, which I'm not going to cover here because that's a whole nother beast. But basically it compiles all of the things you need for the page down into one JavaScript file, and then you only need to include that one file. We're using Gulp, if anyone's familiar with that. There's also other things like Webpack that you could use. But yeah, that's how we're handling that right now.
Thank you.
That's about it.